You're watching News Central now on News Central Television with me, Blessings Musugu. The top stories at this hour. Chief of Defense Staff confirms over 129,000 terrorists surrendered in 6 months. Minister of Power says federal government to add 150 megawatts to national grid before year end. DR Congo President Tshisekedi calls for national debate on constitutional reform. We've got the details in a moment. News Central now at this hour begins with security matters, where Chief of Defense Staff General Christopher Musa has announced that 129,417 Boko Haram terrorists and their families surrendered to Nigerian forces between July 10 and December 9, 2024. Speaking at the 18th Africa Security Watch Conference in Doha, Qatar, Musa attributed the mass surrenders to the military's combined use of kinetic and non-kinetic strategies. The surrendered individuals include 30,426 fighters, 36,774 women, and 62,265 children. Musa emphasized that these efforts have stabilized communities, reduced attacks, and boosted socio-economic development. The conference, themed Developing Modules for People-Centric Governance, also featured Vice Admiral Awal Zubeiru Gambo, who highlighted the role of leadership in advancing peace and security across Africa. Now, staying with security, troops of the Nigerian army have thwarted a bandit attack in Taraba State through a well-coordinated operation. In a statement released on Thursday, Acting Assistant Director of 6th Brigade Army Public Relations, Captain Olubodunde Oni, confirmed the development. Oni said that troops from 6th Brigade Sector 3 Operation Wellstroke, acting on credible intelligence about an impending terrorist attack on several villages, successfully foiled the planned assault in the southern part of the state. Let's still stay on security matters for a bit. We head to Kaduna State now, where 3 bandits have been killed and 2 herders injured as soldiers recovered rustled cattle in Kurutu village, Kacha local government area of Kaduna State. A local community leader confirmed the incident, saying the cattle, including cows and sheep, were found near Hying Dam Forest, bordering Janjala community in Kagako local government area. According to him, the bandits had attacked a Fulani settlement in Kurutu village, rustling livestock and wounding 2 herders in the process. The injured herders were later taken by the troops to a hospital in Katari village along the Abuja-Kaduna highway for treatment. Now, an improvised explosive device explosion has claimed 2 lives at a 200-unit housing estate under construction in Dalwa, Borno State. Now, we understand that the explosion occurred around 1 p.m. on Wednesday, coinciding with the commissioning of housing estates in Maiduguri by Governor Babangana Zulum and his Yobe counterpart, Mai Malabuni. A source said that a similar incident took place on Tuesday, though details remain unclear. Now, Dawa, located 175 kilometers from Maiduguri, is one of many settlements devastated by Boko Haram insurgents. As part of his administration's reconstruction efforts, the governor launched the rebuilding of 200 homes in the community. Away from that now, Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs has called for a joint and collaborative effort by ECOWAS member states to tackle insecurity, terrorism, and transnational crime. This was during the ECOWAS Mediation and Security Council ministerial level meeting at the headquarters of the ECOWAS Commission in Abuja, where the minister, who is also the chair of the council, expressed worry at the escalating threats of terrorism, violent extremism, and transnational organized crime being witnessed by member states. The session is the 53rd since its inception and has in attendance members of the ECOWAS Mediation and Security Council of member states.
The escalating threats of terrorism, violent extremism, and transnational organized crime pose a shared burden that no single country can confront alone. These challenges underscore the necessity of collective action and regional cooperation. As the ECOWAS Regional Action Plan on the fight against terrorism concludes this year, this meeting offers a critical opportunity to chart a forward-looking strategy to bolster our collective security architecture and sustain the momentum in addressing these threats.
Away from that now, the House of Representatives has resolved to investigate alleged smuggling activities by personnel of the Nigeria Customs Service. The House took the decision at a plenary session on Wednesday following the adoption of a motion of urgent public importance sponsored by the member representing Badagry Federal Constituency, Lagos State, Oluwaseun Wingan. Wingan cited an incident involving a journalist in Badagry, Lagos State earlier this month who was assaulted while attempting to make a video recording of activities at a location he described as a smuggling zone. The lawmaker who moved the motion raised eyebrows over the behavior of the customs officers. The motion has, however, been referred to the Committee on Customs and Excise. And now to the oil sector. Dangote Refinery and Neptune Oil have announced the first export of premium motor spirit, commonly known as petrol, from Dangote Refinery, Africa's largest oil refinery, to Cameroon. This milestone, achieved through a strategic collaboration between both companies, highlights their commitment to fostering stronger economic ties between Nigeria and Cameroon while addressing the region's growing energy demands. Aliko Dangote, the president and CEO of Dangote Group, said the first export of PMS to Cameroon is a tangible demonstration of the vision for a united and energy-independent Africa. Now, the partnership between Dangote Refinery and Neptune Oil goes beyond this initial export. Earlier on, a development expert, Bolao Olujede, spoke to us on the development.
We are getting some foreign exchange earnings from refined products. So refined products will now start to contribute more to the foreign exchange earnings of the country. Hitherto, it was crude oil, and maybe a few tiny contributions here and there. Beyond that, it's also the fact that the success of Dangote refineries has implications for job creation in Nigeria, both direct job and indirect job. It will also help on the Cameroon side of things. Hitherto, there has been a racket around all sort of smuggling activities because of the subsidized product in Nigeria that gets smuggled to the neighboring countries and all the rest. I think with the subsidy out of the way, with product being available by from Dangote refinery, some of these activities will also take a turn from the illegal activities and focus more on the legal side of things, which is just.
Time for a quick break now, but when we return, Benue governor presents a 550 billion naira budget to State Assembly. We have the details after the break. Join us again. Many thanks for staying with us. Now, Benue State Governor Hyacinth Alia has presented a 550.1 billion naira budget for the 2025 fiscal year to the State House of Assembly, reflecting a 47.5% increase from the 225.7 billion naira allocated in 2024. Now, the proposed budget allocates 212.2 billion naira to administration, 196.6 billion naira to the economy, 115.5 billion naira to social services, and 26.6 billion naira to law and justice. Capital expenditure is projected at 374.7 billion naira, marking a 71.5% increase, while recurrent expenditure is estimated at 175.4 billion naira, reflecting a 13.55% rise. Now, as part of the ongoing urban renewal drive in Borno State, Governor Mai Mala Buni of Yobe State inaugurated several projects executed by Governor Babangana Zulu. The projects aimed at modernizing the state's infrastructure and improving residents' quality of life, including road networks, housing estates, among others. News Central's Umoru Kirawa completes the report.
Borno State used to be the hotbed of the years of Boko Haram insurgency in Nigeria's northeast. With the echoes of the insurgency fading away, Borno and other states in the Lake Chad are recovering. Housing projects aimed at addressing the accommodation challenges faced by low and middle income earners, an overhead bridge designed to ease traffic congestion are some of the projects the government is inaugurating.
Borno and Yobe states are both thriving to emerge out of that challenge by adopting the Rehabilitation, Reconstruction and Recovery Program. I'm indeed glad to see that we are moving so fast to improve the conditions of our people to live with dignity. On our part, we have invested heavily in education, healthcare delivery, agriculture, and empowerment for sustainable means of livelihood to give the state and its people a promising future.
We celebrate the completion of the Njimtulo 500 housing estates units, the metro housing units, the Borno Express flyover, and the dualization of the Shou-Sandakura road. I place that our administration will continue to work tirelessly to provide infrastructure that supports economic growth, improves quality of life, and enhances the beauty of our cities as part of our rural and urban renewal drive.
The newly inaugurated infrastructure is expected to enhance urban mobility, increase housing availability, and boost the local economy, furthering the state's recovery and transformation agenda.
I want to assure our people of Borno State that inshallah, before the end of my tenure in 2027, you will see many projects in Borno State coming up.
Your Excellency's dedication to transforming our state and improving lives of our citizens is truly inspiring and pivotal in transforming Borno State.
Residents of Borno look forward to the potentials of these landmark projects in improving their conditions. In Maiduguri for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
Now, Nigeria is facing a nationwide blackout as wholesale gas-producing companies have halted natural gas supplies to power generation companies due to unpaid 2.7 trillion naira debt. Chief Executive Officer of the Association of Power Generation Companies, Dr. Joy Ogaji, confirmed the development on Wednesday. Now, she said gas producers have officially notified GENCOs of the suspension. Reports say the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority directed gas suppliers to cease deliveries to indebted GENCOs until further notice, citing mounting arrears. The decision has triggered a sudden halt in gas supply, worsening the country's electricity crisis. Earlier on, the former chairman of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission and director of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought, Dr. Sam Amadi, spoke to us on frequent power grid collapses in the country.
The grids collapse because the grids are frail. Nigerian grid is very frail, meaning you need to revamp them. Some of those lines ought to be, dilapidated. And so the lack of investment in upgrade, in revampment, it means that the grid is frail. Secondly, we have very low insufficient generation. So oftentimes there's no spirit reserves, there are no redundancies to cope with maybe some of the frequency problems. Again, distribution and transmission don't kind of have a good handshake. So sometimes loads are available, transmission network delivers, but the network cannot pick the load. Sometimes a disturbance from the distribution side that affected. And then, of course, now we talk about vandalism. Maybe once there was a fire outbreak along Abuja Chiroro that caused a serious grid collapse. So all this goes back to the same thing, which is that our grid is weak. The managerial capability, change management strategies are still poor.
We now head to Delta State, where Okwama community in Delta State is said to be mourning yet again following the reported death of its 81-year-old treasurer, Dennis Okubaye, in military detention just days after the President General, Pa James Ogoroko, died under similar circumstances. The News Central Television cannot independently verify these claims, but it understood that both were among several leaders detained after the killing of 17 soldiers during a peace mission on March 14. The military's response left Okwama devastated, forcing residents into a displacement camp. Now, protests have reignited, with aggrieved youths issuing a 7-day ultimatum demanding the release of the detained leaders and Pa Ogoroko's corpse. Human rights groups are calling for justice, urging President Tinubu to investigate the deaths and military reprisals, which they describe as violations of human rights and the rule of law. Earlier on, legal practitioner and public affairs analyst Towo Osiruwoje shared his thoughts on this development.
Community, you discover that is a sad day, and it's something that every reasonable Nigerian needs to condemn, because the armed forces or the army, they are the symbol of strength against external forces. And if we ridicule them in that manner, or if they are treated in that manner, we are bringing ourselves down before external forces, be that as it may. Then secondly, we should also look at the response of the Nigerian military, which also need to be condemned, because in every aspect of life, there should be a laid-down law that governs every situation that happens. And the military as an institution is a law, should be, and is a law-abiding institution, which should be lived by example. So the legal remedy that is available to the community now is two things. One, the military does not have, they only have the general power of detention, which every civilian have. And that detention ought not to be with more than 24 hours, and they hand over such suspects to the police, who are basically responsible for internal security and prosecution of crime, prevention and prosecution of crime internally.
Well, we're not done dealing with security matters across Nigeria. As we told you earlier, that in Kaduna State, soldiers have killed 3 criminals and recovered rustled cattle. Now we'll be joined by our guest who will help us make sense of the discovery. To discuss these security issues, we're now joined by security expert Inko Taria Ipalibo, who joins us from Plateau State. Inko Taria, thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Good afternoon to you too, and it's an absolute pleasure. Now, I'm just going to start by asking, how effective would you say that the military's kinetic and non-kinetic strategies have been in combating Boko Haram insurgency so far?
Well, from the results we are seeing, they've not been too effective. They've over time experimented or executed both the kinetic and non-kinetic strategies, and where they are gradually getting certain form of results. Recently, some bandits and terrorists submitted themselves and to them, and the CDS and made the announcement, and they were now considering what the process and the procedure of de-radicalizing them and integrating them would be, because if it is not being handled seriously, the whole submission or surrender could be an exercise in futility. So as it is, the combination of both kinetic and non-kinetic strategy is gradually yielding certain form of result, but the result has not been impressive.
Right, and how would you say that the government can ensure that these individuals who surrendered are not re-radicalized and pose a threat to the society, especially in this era where we discuss rehabilitation a lot more often than we ever did?
Well, it is to ensure that all of them that surrendered are subjected to the institutionalized de-radicalization that the government has set up. There is a center for de-radicalization. And if all those bandits and terrorists that surrendered to the government are subjected to that center, and they are being closely monitored, the tendency for them to be reintegrated as meaningful citizens is high. But if they are not closely monitored and they just pass through the system, albeit religiously, I doubt if they would be properly de-radicalized.
Okay, talking about state integration, how can states work together in addressing these cases of terrorism, banditry, Boko Haram insurgency, and other security challenges that are in the region?
Different states could come together, raise funds together, share ideas together, and share intelligence together, and then make sure that the various security agencies operating within the states are in a common front or a common group. They form a common group that will, without delayed bureaucratic processes, execute as occasion demands. Most times, what really causes problem or what really leads to escalation is the delayed process, the delayed bureaucratic process that is required to execute or to implement certain decisions. So if the various state governments will take off those bottlenecks and empower the security agencies to take action as occasion demands, then the synergy among the agencies and the states would help in fighting crime to a large extent.
All right, thank you so much, security expert Inko Taria Ipalibo, for sharing your thoughts on this. And hopefully we do not have to continuously talk about the security challenges in these parts of Nigeria, because they will be resolved to a large extent. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Now let's head to the court. The Federal Capital Territory High Court in Abuja issued an order of interim injunction prohibiting Lagos-based lawyer Dele Farutimi from publishing, selling, distributing, or advertising the book Nigeria and Its Criminal Justice System in hard copy, digital, or soft copy. After hearing the claimant's ex parte plea by Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Kende Ogunwumiju, the managing partner of Afe Babalola's legal practice, Justice Peter Kekemeke, issued the order. Additionally, the judge temporarily barred the agents, publishers, distributors, sellers, republishers, resellers, and any other individual as described. The court issued the ruling while the motion on notice for interlocutory injunction, which was submitted on the 6th of December 2024, was being heard and decided. After that, the move on notice for an interlocutory injunction was postponed until January 7, 2025. Moving away from the courts now to address the growing challenges posed by drug trafficking as well as reduced drug-related crimes and other criminal activities, Nigeria's federal government says it is set to partner with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. The Minister of Youth Development made this known while receiving a delegation from the UNODC at the ministry in Abuja, saying that the partnership will help promote social awareness, community resilience, and foster a safer and healthier environment for all citizens.
I am very pleased with the reintroduction of the Nigerian Youth Help Desk. Not only it is aligned with the theme of this year, Anti-Corruption Day, it is a viable initiative that can empower young people as agents of accountability and provide ample opportunity to address the various challenges that youth face in accessing justice.
Under this administration, we are determined to rebuild the trust that has been lost and to make the government get more closer to the people, to the young people. For years, the young people have always had the feelings of being let out, no doubt about that. And they do not believe that the government is sincere in any way. They cannot feel the government, like I always said. They cannot touch the government. And we believe that things must just change.
Now, election stakeholders in Algeria have accused political party agents of being complicit in recorded cases of violence witnessed during the recent polls in the country. One group in Algeria, while presenting its post-election report in the nation's capital, Abuja, for the recent Ondo State off-cycle governorship poll, alleged that some of them have been identified to have instigated violence during the election.
Several reports of political party polling agents interfering in the process and doing beyond what their legal rules are. Polling agents were widely seen as a merchant of vote buying in most polling units, and 58% of the violent acts reported to the KDI election day data room were perpetrated by the party agents. There were instances where blatant vote buying by party agents led to clashes, notably in Ward 5 PU3 in Idore local government. In Ward 8 PU6 of Akoko Southeast local government, observers saw party agents fighting over who would assist an elderly man to vote. This call for concern and must be nipped in the bud before they grow out of wings.
With the understanding that Ondo 2024 election took place on the backdrop of lingering electoral challenges that were highlighted by CSOs, civil society organization, in the 2024 Edo State governorship election, particularly issues of result management, logistic inefficiency, and the integrity of the electoral process. The question is, are these elections the standard of credible democracy or credible election? Or is Nigeria merely lowering the bar for electoral excellence?
And out to the aviation sector, the Nigerian Safety Investigation Bureau, NSIB, has launched an investigation into a runway excursion involving a Boeing 737-400 cargo aircraft operated by Allied Air. The incident occurred Wednesday morning at Abuja's Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport when the aircraft veered off runway 22 into a grass verge after landing. No injuries or fatalities were reported, but the plane experienced significant damage. Emergency response teams promptly secured the site. NSIB's GO team is now on site to recover data, assess the damage, and interview relevant parties. Director of Public Affairs, Mrs. Bimbo Oladiji, confirmed the investigation aims to determine the causes and recommend safety measures to prevent future occurrences. Now, as the 16 days activism against gender-based violence comes to an end, stakeholders believe that the message and campaign to respect one another's rights will be impactful on the lives of men and women alike. The Abia State government and civil society groups actively participated in the 2024 campaign to end violence against men and women. News Central's Chinwe Ugele has the report from the summit to mark the end of the 16 days activism on gender-based violence.
This story by Phoebe Onchekwa, a survivor of violence, reflects the story of lots of women in our cultures as Nigerians. The messages by the speakers at the summit of the 16 days activism against gender-based violence in Umuahia, Abia State focus on rights and overcoming temptation to abuse people. Wife of Abia State Governor Priscilla Oti is confident that the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Law will become more useful when the people in the hinterlands become more aware of its existence.
To operationalize the VAP law, we are committed to community sensitization to ensure that everyone understands the provisions of the VAP law and how to utilize it to protect their rights.
Some people are, however, worried that the vulnerability of the female folk places them more at the receiving end of violence from their husbands, colleagues, and male friends.
It's more against the women. Most times, men want to subject women to become the lesser vessel. It will help everybody. If the women most especially know your rights, know who you are. You are not just a commodity to be beaten. You are not you are no bots. Marriage is two-way thing, and not just in marriage, even in schools.
they have taken that position that already they are culturally subordinated, they are economically subordinated, so they don't have any rights anymore. No, they should rise up.
Often people forget that even men get abused by women and fellow men in different ways, but hardly speak out due to societal perception.
Women and girls are vulnerable, and they are also the ones who are always speaking up as against the men who would always die with this negative masculinity that has been taught over the years.
For this 2024 program, the optimism from the civil society groups and the masses that there will be a drop in cases of gender-based violence come next year is the success story.
What it shows is that we've won the war already, for me, against gender-based violence, and it's going to be reduced drastically.
No one deserves to be hurt physically, psychologically, and emotionally. Hence the need to understand that everyone is entitled to being respected, irrespective of gender. In Omaha for News Central, I am Chinwe Ugeli.
That was News Central's correspondent Chinwe Ugeli giving us the updates on the 16 days of activism. Now, coming up, defense lawyer in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial, Tolani Ngumezule, dies. We have the details after the break. Join us again. Now to stories outside the African continent. President of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, has called for a national debate on constitutional reform, urging a review of governance structures. In an address to Parliament, Tshisekedi highlighted the need for reforms to correct flaws affecting state functions. His call comes amid opposition claims that he is maneuvering to extend his presidency beyond the constitutional two-term limit. While he did not specify proposed amendments, Tshisekedi emphasized the importance of enhancing the country's governance framework. The proposal has ignited political debate, with opposition parties closely monitoring any attempts to alter term limits. Tshisekedi's remarks could pave the way for a contentious national dialogue as the country grapples with its political future.
D'engager une réflexion nationale sur une réforme constitutionnelle afin d'éliminer les failles qui ralentissent le fonctionnement de notre appareil étatique. Cette démarche consiste uniquement à lancer une initiative visant à inviter nos compatriotes à une réflexion sincère pour bâtir un cadre institutionnel plus adapté aux réalités et aux aspirations de notre peuple. Je reste convaincu que malgré les défis, unis, nous pouvons transformer nos potentialités en richesses réelles, nos faiblesses en force et notre diversité en un facteur de cohésion. À tous, je voudrais redire, tout est possible à celui qui rêve, ose et n'abandonne pas.
We now head to South Africa, where Tolani Ngumezulu, one of the defense lawyers in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial, has died. His family confirmed in a statement that he passed away on Tuesday. He represented Muzi Sibia, one of the 5 men accused of killing the former Orlando Pirate and Bafana Bafana captain 10 years ago. Advocate Ngumezulu testified last year, raising concerns about his safety. Earlier this year, he informed the court that he believed his life was in danger after 2 suspicious individuals visited his residence. He had been following court proceedings from home due to ill health. Meanwhile, the trial has been postponed to 8th of January 2025 for a special sitting, with the case resuming on the 20th of January. And now, in a diplomatic engagement, Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, has visited South Africa on a courtesy call to South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Mr. Ronald Lamola. This high-level meeting comes at a critical moment as both leaders look to deepen collaboration and align their visions on key global issues. With the G20 presidency on the horizon, the meeting is vital to discuss strategies to advance the pivotal pact for the future, focusing on accelerating efforts to meet sustainable development goals and climate commitments. News Central's Bongani Ziba has the story.
South Africa takes on the presidents of the G20. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres arrived in the country to discuss the immense potential Africa has in leading global affairs. Guterres said he is keenly aware of the significant role Africa can play in shaping governance and addressing pressing issues.
I'm here in South Africa on a mission of solidarity and a mission for justice. And I'm here at a critical time as South Africa assumes the presidency of the G20. This continent's potential is without question. Africa is home to a young and growing population, rich cultural and natural diversity, and a tremendous entrepreneurial spirit. But this enormous potential continues to be held back by injustices that are deeply rooted in the history of colonialism.
This high-level meeting not only symbolizes the strong ties between South Africa and the United Nations, but also highlights the urgency in their discussions, particularly with the G20 presidents on the horizon, a strategic alignment on the pivotal global issues.
This is where we remain rooted in the spirit of Ubuntu, despite our challenges and difficulties in our country. In our language, we explain Ubuntu by saying Umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. Loosely translated, it means I am because you are. This is what ultimately drives our outlook to the world.
Minister Lamola also emphasized the leading role South Africa plays in the continent and that the country stands ready to be a leader, whether it's conflict resolutions or economic recovery.
We hope that through our G20 presidency, we can move closer to a world where sustainability, equality, and solidarity guide our efforts to address the most pressing challenges the people of the world are facing.
The Secretary General Antonio Guterres also touched on the ongoing war in the Middle East, from the devastating Syria to the pressing conflicts across the African continent.
We are witnessing the reshaping of the Middle East, with the changes in the correlation of forces among the key regional actors, with the immense tragedy of the Palestinian people, whose right for self-determination and whose right to have their own state must be constantly reaffirmed. But we also see some signs of hope, and signs of hope namely coming from the end of the Syrian dictatorship.
He also pledged his support for Africa's bid to have a permanent seat at the UN Security Council.
Africa remains without one single permanent member of the Security Council, which is completely unacceptable.
But what does this entail, and is Africa ready and united in such a significant role?
I think it's important that the continent puts the issue on the agenda soon and try and find consensus. Otherwise, we will see divisions and a jockeying for positions and power influenced by external powers.
In Pretoria, for News Central, I am Bongani Ziba.
Let's take a look at some business stories. The arrest of mining executives in Mali, permit threats in Burkina Faso, and the seizure of a French-run uranium site in Niger have heightened risks for Western miners in West Africa, potentially curbing future investments. While day-to-day production in Mali and Burkina Faso remains largely unaffected, industry stakeholders predict challenges in securing finance and insurance, potentially slowing supply growth in the region, a major hub for gold production. These developments coincide with rising gold and uranium prices and efforts by the military governments of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger to renegotiate revenue terms with mining firms. The political shift marked by recent coups reflects a realignment towards Russia and away from traditional allies like France and the United States. And in sports now, Nigeria's under-15 boys, the Future Eagles, arrived in Casablanca, Morocco on Wednesday, December 11, ahead of 2 international friendlies against their Moroccan counterparts. This marks the team's first international outing under the FIFA Talent Development Scheme, TDS. Led by coach Patrick Bassi, the 22-player delegation, including Bendel Insurance under-15 captain Dominion Osage Ighodaro, arrived at 11 a.m. alongside 6 officials. The matches will take place at the Complex Mohammed the Football on December 12 and 15, both kicking off at 5 p.m. local time. Still in sports, Football Kenya Federation FKF President Husseini Mohammed has expressed confidence in Kenya's preparations for the upcoming African Nations Championship CHAN 2024 and the Africa Cup of Nations AFCON 2027. Speaking at a recent event, Mohammed highlighted the importance of these tournaments not only for the Harambee Stars but also for the growth of Kenyan football as a whole. In addition, Hussein pledged a swift appointment of a new head coach for the senior men's national team following the resignation of Engin Farid earlier this week. He acknowledged the challenges ahead but assured the public of a professional and transparent process in selecting a replacement.
The teams will start preparing for CHAN as soon as we have had the discussion with the technical team and organized ourselves in-house. I'm targeting a very short period in terms of this decision-making process. Ideally, for accountability purposes, let me not give you a certain number of days, but it will be very quick. We need to consult a little bit more within the team. Again, like I mentioned, I only got this news last night. We have to, the most important thing first was to address Kenyans and explain that it is true that the coach of the national team decided to terminate, to exit the contract, and that we have to find a solution now moving forward. And that's why this gathering was important, or rather this press conference was important, to avoid any speculation. I know we are coming from a very difficult background and history, and uncertainty can create a lot of anxiety, and that is what I want to avoid. You know very well the preparations of the stadiums is going on. We want to put up a good show at CHAN, at AFCON, and that involves preparing the team adequately.
And that's all on the news at the hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of our major stories. Now, we told you that the Chief of Defense Staff confirms over 129,000 terrorists surrendered in 6 months. We also did mention that the Minister of Power says federal government to add 150 megawatts to national grid before year end. And finally, we told you that DR Congo President Tshisekedi calls for national debate on constitutional reform. You can watch News Central live on DSTV, channel 422, StarTimes, channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Blessings Masugu.